Red Dead Redemption 2 is a story about a gang of outlaws in an ever-changing America that is slowly being taken over by civilization. Through this story where outlaws are becoming less and less welcome, the members of the Van der Linde gang are torn between the decision of whether to hold on and possibly die with the past, or leave it behind and create a new life for themselves. But for now, let's look at the big picture. Often, video games have a poor reputation in the view of the public. They seem to be a waste of time and only something that children play. Red Dead Redemption 2 has changed all of that, though. This game has been credited with providing ways to teach people skills that are highly useful in real life, such as problem solving, improved concentration, developing social skills, and even teaching leadership. There are also heavier concepts that this video game tackles, such as the importance of different cultures, the acceptance of immigration, and the complexity of moral judgment. For these reasons and more, Red Dead is the best video game ever developed. One of the reasons the New York Times called this game true art is because of the rich graphics contained in this world. In Red Dead, the world truly feels alive. This game was in development for 7 years and had a production budget of over $370 million. This investment is obvious as you travel through the world to each mission. Over 1,200 actors were used to create the many different non-player characters, or NPCs, who are living their own artificial lives as you pass by on your way to complete your missions. As NPCs, most of these characters have no additional impact on the story or the life of Arthur Morgan. However, you can often hear them talking about the family they are going back to or the details of their daily lives, which brings a feeling of community and depth to the game. Another reason the world feels so alive is from the wildlife that are present. In the world of Red Dead, there is a sense of amazement watching the rich graphics of the scenery and the animals as they pass by. From snowy mountains to swampy marshlands, the map of this game covers it all. This game is also a sensory experience because of the beauty of its weather systems. In my opinion, the true beauty comes from the rain. While exploring, sometimes you can look off in the distance and see a forest that is being covered by a remarkable storm. The final version of Red Dead contains over 300,000 animations, so it is easy to see why it's such an artistic production. Arthur Morgan is the main protagonist throughout the story of Red Dead Redemption 2. Arthur was one of the founding members of the Van der Linde gang, which he joined at the age of 14 after the death of both his parents. This means that immediately from a young age, his values were influenced by the gang and the events that they went through together to survive. He learned to survive through a life of crime, but he also has many characteristics which make him likable. He's often described as a bad man with a good heart. Even though Red Dead 2 is a game made up of the connections that the player has with the characters, there is no doubt that the strongest attachment in the game is with Arthur Morgan. Throughout the journey the game takes you through, we live all of the events that Arthur has to go through and see how they are able to change him. While Arthur's physical journey takes him across the plains of America, the most prominent of Arthur's journeys is an emotional one through the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. This emotional journey shows the difference of humanity between Arthur and the other gang members and is the main reason we accept his flaws and grow to admire him.
When I was just glad you know, I met a gal from old Bordeaux. She had blonde hair and blue eyes too. Let me ride on the ring-dang-doo.
And the ring-dang-doo, now what is that? Soft and round like a pussy cat. Got a hole in the middle and a split in two.
The main reason that Red Dead's critically acclaimed story is viewed so graciously is because it's character-driven. Granted, there are times where some plot device miraculously arrives just when the characters need it, but for the most part, the connections and interactions between the members of the gang realistically fuel the storyline and the motivations of the members. In total, there are 29 members of the gang, but not all of them has as heavy an impact on the story as others. While not in a mission, you, as Arthur, can walk around the camp and view how these characters interact with one another. This also adds some life to the world you play in, as these characters go through their everyday lives, and you feel that you begin to know them. These people are all complex characters with their own motivations and values. An example of this is in the leader Dutch Van der Linde. Throughout the story, Dutch's motivations and values are changed as the gang has more and more pressure put on them by the law. but his personality mostly stays the same, with a mix of being very benevolent while also being conniving to make sure that the gang is able to get what they need to survive. This level of detail within the game helps to make the NPCs feel more alive and realistic. This is very important to the story within Red Dead because of the attachments that the player grows with the characters and how this affects the gameplay. As the player becomes closer to the characters, the player also feels closer to the gang and begins to understand its overall values and motives. The playstyle of the player often transitions from a merciless outlaw to a more balanced thieves with honor mentality. These small details that are added to the characters make a huge difference in the immersion of the player into the story. There are many reasons that this game is so immersive, a few of which I have already touched on, these being the sensory details in the game that enhances how alive the world feels, the relationships that you develop with the characters, and how real the characters in the gang feel because of how understandable their values are, and the amazing story that grows and deepens as it progresses. However, for me, the most immersive experience that I found was playing as Arthur Morgan. While playing through the game, the player is responsible for deciding every action that Arthur makes. Every action is scored by an honor system, where there is a visual scale with bad actions being on the left, and good actions being on the right. The way the game's moral judgment fits into this scale is through the actions that the player chooses. In real life, as a society, we have standards for what is considered good and bad behavior. Red Dead 2 uses a similar system to judge a character's honor and to set a social standard for Arthur to follow. For example, killing an innocent person reflects low honor, while killing someone who is attacking a defenseless woman earns you higher honor. Certain actions that the player chooses can affect their score on the scale, resulting in the supporting characters in the game world treating Arthur differently based on the decisions you make for him. One example of Arthur being treated differently is that while Arthur has a high honor rating, you as the player will get a discount in shops on every item, which makes your chances of succeeding in the game higher. This lets the player become more immersed in the game world because they are able to put themselves in the protagonist's boots and make difficult choices that have consequences that affect them and their success in the game. Though this game takes some creative liberties and portrays the times lived in it as more appealing than they actually were, the game is fairly accurate in the big picture of what was happening around 1899. It is so accurate that Tor Olson, a history professor from the University of Tennessee, will begin teaching a course titled History of the United States, or HIUS 383, Red Dead America, this fall. This course will cover some of the historical issues that are represented in the game, such as the frontier mythology and its long afterlife, the expansion of monopoly capitalism and how railroads extended corporate power, settler colonialism, and the dispossession of native people. Two other great examples of where Red Dead 2 accurately portrays real history in the game include information about women fighting for the right to vote, which wasn't passed into law until 1920, the segregation and discrimination that existed at the time, and the deadliness of certain diseases that are now extremely uncommon thanks to vaccines that are available. If you wish to learn more information about this topic, it might be nice to attend Professor Olson's class. Red Dead Redemption 2 is viewed by many as one of the greatest video games to ever exist. Its storytelling is one that will be remembered for years to come and will influence many to base a life around trying to recreate something similar to the feeling that most get from playing the game through its entirety. It deals with complex situations and draws the player into challenging moral questions. From the engaging and compelling personalities of the characters to the beautiful and dynamic landscapes, I assure you this game will stick in your mind for many years to come.